Hello, I'm Keith with the Trombone Shop at Schmidt Music, back with another instrument review for you. And today I have an instrument, or at least a variation of this instrument that we've looked at before, but I thought it was a really nice opportunity to come back and take a look at it again. So specifically, I'm talking about the Bach 42BOF large bore tenor trombone. So I did, a number of years ago, I did a review, actually a couple reviews of a similar setup from Bach as a part of their Centennial line. With this, of course, if you watched that video or may be aware, the big difference with the 42BOF versus some of the other Bach Stradivarius options is the use of the Meinl Schmidt Open-Flow valve. So, like I said, I've actually had a number of requests to talk about this valve. I thought it'd be a really nice time to come back and kind of look at it again in maybe a little bit different light than we did, say, 6-7 years ago. So, I'm excited to share this experience, talk about it. I will, of course, be playing everything today on my trusty Bach 5G. As I mentioned, the Bach 42BOF was originally introduced as the Bach Centennial large bore tenor trombone. And the big thing that made a difference with that Centennial model, beyond some really nice engraving and stuff, was the use of the Meinl Schmidt Open-Flow valve. And at that time, that valve was viewed by some to be kind of an interesting choice. It was a very different option than anything else Bach had previously offered with their large bore tenor trombones, or bass trombones as it happened. And it was a very unique kind of experience. It had, some really, really nice feedback. It fit a different kind of player, right? I think at that time, I described it as a Bach that didn't play like a Bach. And, of course, at that time, the Centennial model featured not only the Meinl Schmidt Open-Flow valve, but we were using a lightweight gold brass bell. There was a little bit different setup stuff happening with it. So, in the more general 42BOF setup, where we're dealing with a standard Bach 42 kind of setup, but with the Open-Flow valve, like I said, I've gotten a number of different questions, requests to talk about this experience. And given that it's not something that I have really spent a lot of time, sharing, I thought it'd be a really good opportunity to come back to it. So let's talk for a second about the setup itself. As I mentioned, this is really your classic Bach 42 setup. So 8.5-inch one-piece yellow brass bell, traditional standard, yellow brass tuning slide. With the open flow valve, we do get a broader F side tuning slide here, a little bit more open setup, kind of reminiscent of some of the, for example, Minnick inspired wraps, etc. We have a little bit of the German European inspired wrap that's actually ducking down beneath the main bell brace there. And then of course we have the open flow valve itself and a standard Bach 42 hand slide 547 bore, yellow brass outer tubes, yellow brass crook. Now, the experience a lot of folks have had with this valve is, again, it's a very different air concept. When I think about how instruments are designed, how they play, who they work for, one of the first things I start off with is airflow, right? And we have different designs that work for different folks. And I think of it kind of on a spectrum. On one side, we have, for example, our Con 88H. A little bit smaller setup, more efficient, right? It doesn't need as big, broad, full airstream, or can accept that kind of airflow. And then on the other side, we have really the Bach 42 kind of setup, right? Much more open, much broader, needs a lot more air support within all of this. And what I think a lot of people responded to with the open flow valve is it was kind of an interesting combination. You had so much of that Bach openness happening, but then in the middle, all of a sudden, kind of right in the middle of setup, you had this valve that just really doesn't accept that same type of really big, broad, frankly, a little bit kind of, fire hose kind of airstream. It needs a little bit different nuance, or we start backing up. And I think for a lot of folks in the past, if we approached it like we approach a Bach 42, right? Even just a standard 42, if we approach the valve like that, it tends to choke off, right? So coming back to this, when I played this instrument, I was really trying to think about, okay, what do I need to modify? What do I need to change with my airstream for it to really work with me? And what I ended up finding is that it brings a certain type of a European sensibility, in particular in terms of kind of the air support, but efficiency at the same time here. So when I played through this valve, first thing I really noticed, again, kind of leaning into it a little bit, is that it does have this wonderfully kind of dense sound. It certainly has some of the Bach ring to it, but has a little bit more denseness in the middle there. Compact is not really the right word, because I still feel like I was able to get a lot of resonance out of it, but it did feel like it had a little bit more support in a certain way. But I also found I had to change my air approach. The way I kind of ended up approaching it is, well, like some other maybe more German, European style provided instruments, where a lot of air support, but a little bit slower. As soon as I start to push it, as soon as I start to think more fast airflow, everything compacts down and starts getting really, really edgy. The response and control stability just kind of goes out the window. But if I sit back a little bit and let the instrument do a little bit more of the work, but making sure I'm providing this fairly broad air support, it gets this wonderful response. One of the things I found with this is moving between partials, moving in and out of the valve. It felt as seamless, as trustworthy as any other instrument that I've played in kind of recent memory. I have a lot of faith even in some of these these quieter excerpts, something like the Saint-Saëns, that really tricky last A flat to D flat. I really didn't have to worry about it. I just kind of trusted that, I'm going to keep my air support happening. Everything's going to it's just the D flat's just going to be there, and it was. Right? And so I think there's a really nice smoothness. And by the way, that also carries through not just between individual partials back and forth. Lip slurs, everything, they just feels really, really fast and connected. It still slots in place. It doesn't feel slippery like some instruments, but it certainly had the real continuity and flexibility to it. I felt moving into the trigger register, it had a certain type of insistency, not nearly like, for example, when I think about the Con 88 HNV with its really tight Minnick wrap, that's got an energy. to it. That gets a little bit different, kind of vibrancy to it. With this, it felt supported, but it still felt open. It didn't feel like it was completely changing the timbre. Now, of course, the big thing with this is that you have to play the horn the way the horn wants you to play, right? This is not an instrument you're going to be able to force. So where I see a lot of benefit is if a player is somebody who is, they've got the air support happening to it and they're comfortable with that, but maybe they feel a little bit tired of just dumping a lot of air through to get this big sonorous timbre. Something like this, I think, can give us, something that's a beautiful complexity to the sound, this wonderful nuance to the response, but with just a little bit of this constant airflow. But if you're not that kind of player, if you are somebody who's more comfortable with, I want to be moving air through the horn, it's not going to fit you, right? So it's a particular subset of the Bach offerings, but I think it bears coming back and looking at again there, because again, I think there's some really nice performance sound attributes to it. So I hope you enjoyed my experience being able to share this with you on the Bach 42 BOF. If you have experience with the 42 BOF, the Centennial model, maybe other experience with the Meinl Schmidt valves, obviously we'd love to have you leave those in the comments. If you haven't already done so, think about subscribing to our channel, hitting that notification button, hitting the like button for this video. And of course, you can find the Trombone Shop on Facebook and Instagram. As always, thanks for watching.